Thanks for sticking here until the kind of last talks. So yeah, I'm from Frogmind, and we are studio founded in 2012. And I'm here to kind of show the angle of like what happened after making an indie hit. So what have we been doing after that, and what's our plan now, and what has worked and what hasn't worked so well. And just a quick question, just to know a little bit of you guys. Like, how many of you are developers? Publishers? What else? Students? Okay, cool. So mostly developers. Okay, so our story basically starts with our launch on iOS in April 2013. We launched a premium game called Badland. It got a really good visibility in the beginning, editor's choice. Then it afterwards got a bunch of awards, including Apple Design Award and iPad Game of the Year in December of that year. And about 9 months later, we brought it onto Android with a different business model. So, I mean, Android premium market was already really bad back then, and it's pretty much non-existent now. So we just put some ads in, and like one unlock in-app purchase, so that you can unlock the kind of equal premium version that was on iOS. We basically were building a brand at that moment, and would have much rather taken 1 million downloads and 0 revenue than say 10,000 downloads and 20,000 in revenue. But yeah, the Android approach worked surprisingly well. It has about 30 million downloads at the moment, and kind of all in all, it's one of the biggest mobile premium hits in the last years, with about 7 million in aggregate revenue from all of the channels. After the iOS launch, we featured, we updated it maybe once per 6 weeks, once per 4 weeks, with really consistent plan of like churning updates out every now and then, and went from 40 levels to the current like kind of 200 levels, and then eventually released the level editor that we used ourselves for making those levels, and now players can make levels and share them in the game, and we featured best levels weekly still, and even put one level to the official levels every week. And after that, we have kind of taken a test of all of the markets. So it's on all mobile. My timing is a little bit weird. It says it's over. Yeah, it's on all mobile markets, and then we also took it onto all consoles except for 360 and PC, Mac, and Linux. But about 90% of all of the revenues is actually just from iOS and Android here includes also Amazon and Humble Bundles and all kinds of smaller channels. So we have from those 40 million installs that we have, about 38 million, so 95% are from iOS and Android. And from revenue, about 90% is from iOS and Android. And Android is interesting because it's been about the same every single day for the last 2.5 years. It's really like consistently 20,000 downloads every day, and we don't have the numbers to do any user acquisition, so it's all organic, whatever that means. It's like I don't even know exactly where it comes from. Is it like Google's algorithms and all the kind of leaves in the tree that like constitute in the total visibility to kind of same amount every time, every day? And this is actually the first year that the daily revenue is actually bigger on Android than on iOS, because it's been completely stable. The iOS sales have been about 2/3 every year, like of the previous year, so the tail has been pretty long. And for those who might not know the game, it's this kind of side-scrolling action adventure where you control this little furball that has a tendency to clone himself, and then you fly this. He and his pals to different kind of brutal massacres of plates and stuff where most of them die, but hopefully you will get one of them to finish the level. And it starts with a kind of beautiful nature and gets darker when you progress in the game, when kind of strange machines are coming to life on the background, and things are getting harder and harder for the little guys to survive. So the first version of Badland was actually done by just 2 people, so the company was very indie at the time. And it was like, after the launch was a success, it was like, okay, yeah, money is coming in, but how long will that actually continue? Do you dare to take a little bit more risk and think that, like, yeah, maybe we can grow something bigger out of this and try to milk the opportunity and make it bigger, or do you just kind of keep the status quo and be happy with having finances for the 2 people to make games for the next coming years? So do you even want to make it a business, or kind of stay where it's nice and just about making games? And when we thought about it, kind of more platforms, at least Android was a kind of clear choice to do, and probably, I mean, SQL sounded like a nice idea. But we tried to take a look on the market and also think where do we want to be in 3 to 5 years, or where is the market going to be in 3 to 5 years? And we made the decision to grow, and now we have basically grown from 2 to 14 people, and from 1 team to 3 small teams. Our teams are pretty independent, and we have tried to create a culture where they are pretty self-directed, and we just have weekly kind of overview meeting, and then they decide what they do based on the feedback in that meeting, and don't really force any decisions on them. But yeah, there were some growing pains, definitely. So it took about a year for the new people to kind of start working really kind of creatively together and kind of know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and somehow just to get really kind of the brainstorming and going at ease and be productive. So what have we learned on the way, and what has worked and what hasn't? So I think obviously the Android stuff was pretty good going with a different business model, but I'm happy that we didn't do try to convert the game, which was inherently premium by design, into a free-to-play game. I don't think that would have worked. It's easy to say that we could have skipped the whole huge pains of bringing the console versions and PC versions, because they are less than 10% of the total revenue of the game. And it's really, overall, it's really tough going from a mobile game to console to the kind of from the casual platform to the holy platforms of gaming. It's quite okay to do it the other way, like Limbo, that your first PC game and are on the kind of more respectable platforms, and then put it, even though it's pretty much exactly the same game, you put it on the mobile, and everybody's like, yeah, we got a quality game here. But if you do it the other way, it's there's a lot of people who said keep this mobile crap out of here, even if the case is kind of that if it was first on the console and not mobile, you wouldn't even think that it's a mobile game to start with. But yeah, it was really kind of interesting to see all the markets and get the kind of comparative numbers from all of them. Interestingly, Xbox performed a lot better than all 3 Sony platforms together in our case. I think it was a case of that they just support more of the indie developers than maybe Sony is a little bit more of the AAA games. And yeah, we didn't get a ton of visibility there, although that we got a although they kind of implied that in their conversations before. We have put a lot of time on kind of biz dev and traveling and kind of talking with all kinds of opportunities. And I have spent a shit ton of time with China because, yeah, it's an interesting market, it's a big market, it's a growing market, it's a weird market. Maybe I could have spent a little bit less time with that. We have a publisher in China who has published Badland and is working on Badland 2 now for the Chinese Android market. iOS is ours. But yeah, I don't know. There's been a lot of talk, and like I think many, like discussing with other devs, many have kind of concluded that like, yeah, you maybe shouldn't use huge amounts of time with that because usually it doesn't do so well as it's not so good as it sounds. And we also dipped into some merchandising because we have a pretty visual product. But merchandising, especially for mobile games, the audience is not really super loyal to mobile games. So you need a really, really big audience like Angry Birds or Minecraft, then it might work. But for a game with 40 million downloads, it's not nearly enough. But yeah, one of the coolest things about Finnish game scene is that the developers don't seem to compete with each other, and that's been really, really important. All those discussions and sharing of data and sharing of actual experiences of what has worked and what hasn't worked. So I would definitely encourage everybody to do that. I have even cold called many of the foreign developers, and they have been exactly the same when I have been asking and discussing stuff. So I think everybody is kind of wanting to help the other developers, so you should kind of tap into that. And of course, share your stuff in return. So if somebody of you wants to hear more of the in-depth data, for instance, from different markets or whatever, just ask after this or come talk with me. So last Christmas then we came out with Badland 2. And actually 2 hours ago it came onto Android platform globally, so it's a pretty fresh release on that side. We licensed it to, thanks. On the Android side, we are actually working with the publisher, Cheetah Mobile. And because we have like not too many developers still in our company, and we are making many new products. It's two things, like we get a little bit less use of our resources, because every game that you make is kind of a long-term commitment. I mean, you're going to keep updating it and developing it for us and putting more levels and content there. So it ties down people. So when it was first launched in last Christmas, it came just for the holidays. And we came from totally kind of from bushes for the media. We hadn't even announced anything about the game. And part of the reason was that, like, for instance, when we came onto the consoles, we had announced it, and that announcement got like a huge pickup. But when the game actually came out, and that announcement was kind of more old news, and it got a lot less pickup. So especially on the mobile side, which is really, really noisy, and lots of games coming out all the time, and especially for the Christmas period, we just wanted to make an announcement at the same time. When you're reading the announcement, you can actually act on it and get the game, and so that it would have the maximum impact. And we had a nice Metacritic over the holidays because we came from bushes, and like sites didn't actually have enough time before closing shop for the holidays to review it, so we got just like the most interested sites to review it, and then then it was locked for the next 3 weeks. So Badland 2 was still premium game at $5. At the same time, we lowered the price of Badland 1 from $4 to $3. And it actually lifted also the sales of the first Badland, like about 40% for about 3 months. Probably because like it had a good visibility in the store, and people checking the game without knowing what is the first Badland. If they didn't know the IP, they probably downloaded the cheaper one first. And yeah, so coming with the premium game out in end of 2015 was pretty nerve-wracking. We didn't exactly know what to expect. We hoped that the millions of Badland 1 players would convert at least to a certain extent, because the game was well liked. I remember vividly the night of the launch that I was like just checking the leaderboard all the time, because that was kind of the only data that we can get real time from how many players we have. And it was really painful because the amount was really small. So when I went to the work next day, I had like pretty terrible lifetime estimates for the game, which were not gonna be happy news for the studio. But when we actually got the data, like midday that day from the previous day, it was actually 7 times bigger. So it seemed that people actually paid $5 for a game, but didn't play it there and then. Like more, like 85% of the people didn't play after purchasing the game. They were saving it for the weekend or whatever. Which was, yeah. So it's kind of like, I mean, the gaming is a roller coaster, but like, yeah, each launch is a total roller coaster of emotions and fears and expectations and hopes. I mean, we got super good visibility, but we were still kind of unsure that like what's gonna do. We knew that some of the biggest premium games were still doing okay, but it was getting tougher. So the first month revenue from Badland 2 was actually about the same than for Badland 1, but the first 8 months revenue is only half of what it was for Badland in 2013, and that doesn't even include Christmas Game of the Year sales, which was really good. But overall, it's like it's been much in the gaming news that like the tail of the sales has really gone down quite a bit. It's really short in comparison to what it was in 2013. Like for Badland 1, the midpoint of the lifetime value is probably around 18 months or so. But yeah, currently many have claimed that it's only 3 months from maybe from 10 to 20 months then, only 3 months now. And I have seen data from many recent premium launches that have got an okay featuring, like let's say like Best New Games 6 or 5 or 4. And quite many of them are around $10,000 per the launch week. Which is pretty nasty, because you are like in the select few who actually got featured, and still it doesn't really sustain more than like 1 or 2 indies. So yeah, premium is quite tough. Well, then again, free-to-play is really tough as well. There are so many well-funded studios there, and UA costs and all the additional elements that come to that you have to have a. But there are some exceptions there as well. But yeah, I mean, like the previous presentation said about the indie apocalypse, the market is maturing, but I think there's always kind of. It starts with making really, really good game, and then you can test it and communicate and see what opportunities you can use to come out with it. Definitely try to contact platform holders, send them, for instance, a video, like 30 seconds of actual gameplay, no faking, just like saying that like we are working on this kind of stuff, and like when would you maybe see that would be a good launch window around these months or something like that. Something that they can action, and like if it looks good, they might just reply you. So for our company, we have managed to grow revenues every year basically. so far, and we know already that this year is going to be our best year so far, although that the tails are getting shorter, etc. But we are on. It still helps to be on lots of markets and even the small kind of rivers, I mean, get bigger together. So we have taken much more risk, but we are still nicely profitable. And when we were kind of taking the new direction, the market's message for the free-to-play kind of was pretty clear that like that's going to dominate and it's going to be a squeeze for the premium games. So at the same time that we have developed Badland 2, we actually developed our first free-to-play project as well, with kind of the feeling that like there's got to be much innovation to be done on kind of fair monetization and like in interesting ways of not just shoving marketing on your face, but like doing it in a way that it gives value to the player. But that project started pretty kind of too much from the premium and the game design that we had then, and we killed it after more than a year of development, which was pretty painful. And the development was pretty painful too, because we felt that like it's not getting fun enough. The core gameplay is not good enough. But once we kind of all that pain also kind of was really good learning experience, because we were like really kind of studying and thinking. And it just took calendar time. So now that kind of writer's block of the first project is gone, we are working on multiple new games on the free-to-play side as well, and feel really good about them at the moment, and excited to be hopefully showing them to you guys as well in 6 or so months' time. I guess that was the last slide, yeah. Cool. Do you have anything you want to know? I'll glad to give the honest numbers.
Does anyone have any questions before we finish up? Yep, Elspeth.
Hi, Taimo. Thanks for the talk.
Thanks.
I have a specific question to the monetization on Android. How does the pay gate work for you? Because in my personal experience, it's always a big fail. Was it different in your case?
It's not a pay gate to us. Like you can keep on playing the whole game just by watching the kind of ads in between of the levels.
Yeah.
But you always kind of get asked first that like, do you want to unlock the premium or continue with ads? And then if you say
okay,
no,
so just
thanks.
ads removal.
So yeah, it's basically ads removal. But also, if you don't do the removal, then you need to get good enough score to open the next level packs, and like some kind of small hindrances are like so that.
Ads plus opening all levels at once.
Yeah.
Get it.
But it's like the conversion is crappy. It's around like 1%.
Yeah.
So I mean, the ads are actually making 70% of the revenue, and 30 comes
that.
from me up.
That's why I'm asking. Okay, thanks a lot.
Cool.
Any other questions? Well, there's one over there.
This question is kind of off topic and absurd, but that weird rabbit thing in the background of Badland, what's the story behind it? It always creeps the hell out of me. And
yeah. So the kind of story of the game happens on the background and in the visuals of like what's happening with the weird animals. Some things maybe like, they looked possessed, etc., and which they kind of are when the machines are rising in the Badland universe, and they're kind of like changing the nature, so they are changing also the other creatures except for you. So there's just messed up other animals that weren't as lucky as you because they got caught when they were running.
That's cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else? That was a good question to end on, so